good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning from. On today's Sales Confessions, I'm really excited to welcome Hayden Anderson. He is a top AE at MadKudu, started slinging high volume PLG deals at Lucid, and is now closing 50K enterprise contracts like a pro. Before that, he was selling religion in Korea, which according to him is still the hardest thing he'll ever have to sell. He's got 2.5 kids. A bunch of rabbits. It's a pretty endless story, but we're really excited to welcome Hayden on the podcast today to share some stories and confess a little bit. Hayden, are you ready for today's session?
I am ready. And I have both rabbits and kids. They're not the same. You kind of made it sound like I call them one or the other, but I have both.
Love it, love it. Awesome. Well, in this format, we really like to go a little bit deep into confessions and have reps share actual stories. Some are success stories, some are horror stories. I do feel like we learn a lot from our failures. And so would love to hear one of your kind of fail stories. Like, what is something that in your career as a rep has gone wrong that you think is, relevant to a lot of sellers out there?
Yeah, it's a great topic in sales. And I think that sellers were always we run into a lot of pains or problems that we're trying to solve, whether it's for someone else or for ourselves. And this example, I was trying to solve one for myself because at Lucid Chart, we sell to IT. And I don't know how many of you all have sold to IT, but it's got its own special challenges selling to that persona. And I think that the biggest one is they don't want to talk to you. They don't want to talk to people. It's not just you, but they do a lot of async work and admin work for a lot of tools. I mean, they're very busy, but they don't love meetings. And that's a problem when you're trying to meet with them to talk about upsells and renewals and all the things that we do as a PLG salesperson at Lucid Chart. And so my fail was I had a new book handed to me, a couple hundred accounts, never met any of them, and I kept running into a problem where I could not get time with these admins before their renewal hit. So either it would auto renew or there'd be a big problem because they didn't want to renew, and it was just causing a lot of issues. So I decided that I would try something new where instead of asking for time or calling these people, I would just grab the admin's email and put it on their calendar. I would just put a random time on a random day and invite them. And I did this with 20 or so of my accounts for 1 month of my renewals and opportunities I was trying to get. And the fail was, as you can imagine, there were people that were really upset or pissed off about this. And because I was a 25-year-old AE back then, and the first or second person I tried it on joined the call and got visibly like very upset that I had done this. And he really dug into me a lot. And at that point I didn't send any more. I'd already sent like 20 out. And yeah, that's the big fail. And the story continues, but I don't want to like overuse my time. Did you want to add any questions to it or thoughts, Francis?
I love how you can't take the salesperson out of a salesperson, right? Where you're asking me for more discovery, even though you're sharing your
Yeah.
story and you're the star of the show. No, I think it's a really interesting story because I think it could feel like a humble brag, right? At the end of the day, like there's two ways to look at this, like the glass half empty or half full. Like on the one hand, you ended up having this, one person yell at you, but at the same time, out of the 20 meetings that you put on people's calendar, how many did you end up booking from that?
Yeah, I actually ended up having probably 6 or 7 conversations or at least responses. And then one person obviously that got really mad. And then one that was sort of upset, but it ended up turning into one of my biggest opportunities that quarter just from that setup. And so ultimately you could say it's a success, but as a salesperson, I think we focus on the negative a lot and on people saying why that's messed up, that's shady, or whatever they want to say, right? But I got some conversations. Most of them were not happy, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think it feels like that's one of the good ways to look at it, right? Because if you get 6 conversations out of this, I mean, that is a like 30% response rate, which is pretty massive from that perspective. And then having one person say no in a pretty angry way doesn't seem like it's not the highest cost to book like one of your highest opportunities. And I guess like this is like something that I find a lot of organizations don't do necessarily like a great job of like getting reps to talk about this and to help them share how they feel about this, because at least from my perspective it feels like this is something that I would have encouraged a lot like if you manage to book 30%, conversations with this, definitely feels like this was a great way to get in front of your customers to talk about renewals and potentially do this a little bit earlier than the 30-day before their renewal was up. Like, why do you think this was not something that was discussed? Like, why it was not in your kind of like typical one-on-one with your manager?
Yeah, I think it was one, it wasn't like a endorsed playbook, and Lucid's a pretty established organization where there's set sequences, set messaging, things that you do as a rep, and then they don't necessarily discourage experimenting, but they're a little more conservative sometimes. I think a lot of organizations or even sales leaders can be like this. So that's one reason why I didn't like tell other reps, "Hey, you got to try this. I got a meeting from it." I probably made jokes about it with my friends, but like, no, I think I was worried that it would have been looked down on or not a best practice, or I don't know, right? That's the thing you don't know when you're just a 25-year-old kid on a 200-person sales team.
Are you still using this play or anything that you've kind of learned from it and you've evolved it, or is it something you're still using today?
Yeah, so I I used it this week in a different way where I'm in a more, like you said in the intro, I'm in a little bit more of a lengthy and involved, almost more enterprise conversation with people where they're investing more money and we have more meetings more often. And so I typically have a relationship with these people. And even then, it's hard to always have a next meeting on the calendar. So what I've just been doing is putting time on their calendar and in the notes just saying, if you need to move this, go for it. And I'd say the last couple of weeks, at least half of them just show up at that time, and then 30% reschedule and the other ones just ignore it, which is pretty solid. And we have a lot of, I had two today that showed up actually. It's kind of a modified version of this where the relationship definitely helps.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes it easier because you've been speaking with them, like you have an
Right.
active deal. But I think it's one of these things where, like, I think every organization talks about how do we deal with people that are ghosting us. And I think like when you have that relationship, I think it's a pretty effective way to deal with the ghosting by actually like giving them the opportunity to no longer ghost you by actually like putting time on their calendar and not needing to go through their overly crowded inbox that they might have.
Yeah, I like how you put like give them the opportunity to not ghost me, because I think so much more often than salespeople realize is people are just overloaded with things that they are thinking about that they need to do. They're not thinking about you all day, every day, believe it or not, salespeople. And so I think this helps them just say, okay, cool, it's on the calendar. I can just slide it and move it to an open slot instead of clicking a calendar link and responding to an email. And like, it might seem small, but as a rep, I've noticed that even small things stacked on top of each other can really weigh you down. And so you just got to feel for those people. And I think it's a great way to do it.
Love it. Sweet. Well, switching gears a little bit, we love to talk about AI, not just at MadKudu, but on the confessions in general. And so I'm curious, like, what are some ways that you use AI today in your sales process?
Yeah, so I think this is a timely question because we just ended Q1 here, and for the first time ever, I actually spoke with ChatGPT because you
Our
can do a voice
overlord.
for, yeah, our overlord with the grand boss of us all, right? And so I turned on voice mode through a recommendation from a mentor, and I uploaded a list of questions that we would want to run through about our opportunities, about our process, kind of made the prompt relevant to me, everything that my manager would have asked over an hour call with me. And I had ChatGPT ask me instead. It's so nice because she recorded everything that I was saying, that she was saying. I can push back on things she was saying. I can ask for her opinion based on her vast knowledge in the universe of the internet, right? And so I did my whole Q1 retro using AI, and yeah, I think it was pretty sweet. I don't know if you've had other people do that.
Yeah, I think it's something that we're starting to see people do, but I think maybe not at this scale. I think a lot of people use it for like more, I don't know, like gadgety use cases. I think that this idea of using it to do a retro is really interesting. And it sounds like one of the things that you really appreciated about this was the change in user experience, right? The user experience of doing a retro is usually having a manager ask you a bunch of questions and take notes, and you don't really get a second chance at answering the question, or it doesn't necessarily feel like a safe space
Yeah.
where you can go back and say, actually, let me edit that and change it. And so either you have to write it down before and do all that prep work, But in this case, it's funny that the AI feels like it's creating a safe space for you.
Oh yeah. Like the fact that I can say that again 3 different times on the same question and not feel like an idiot, it was great. And like I think that a safe space is a good way to put it. So super helpful. Gave me, for example, like it gave me some really good ideas where we built a really cool new sales process in the last 2 quarters here at MadKudu, and we've had a drop off point. And I asked ChatGPT about the drop off point, and like she's asked a lot of questions around what leads up to that, what's leading to this drop off point, and came to a few ideas around how we can get through it. And I can go into details about that, but it's been super cool to work with it.
Love it. Would you consider using it for kind of a regular like weekly deal review, or kind of almost like doing your pipeline review prep by, like sharing some notes, like anonymized like customer names, but kind of like going through that?
Yeah, totally. And we have Gong here, and I can get whole call transcripts, I can get summaries and use that as part of a prompt with ChatGPT and actually talk through it and say, what are some words that I overused, or what's a better way to ask this question? That's an actual one I did. Like I always ask, like, what are you doing today when it comes to XYZ that they're asking about? And instead of asking that, ChatGPT said I should say, how long is it taking you to do this right now? Just getting a little more specific and pushing for numbers instead of what are you doing today? It's how long does it take to do that? And then they talk through what they're doing, right? So yeah, it's pretty sweet, and I could see being used every week or every day.
Love it. And that's a super relevant example where it's kind of helping you narrow down the question, because it kind of knows what you're trying to get to from your sales process, and saying, instead of asking a very open-ended question, just keep it open-ended, but just make it a little bit narrower, to ask like, hey, what I really care about is like, how painful is it? And instead of framing it that way, it's like, how long does it take you? That's super interesting. Any other maybe like insights that came out of these, either the retros or like something where you're like, oh, this is like a really interesting recommendation that came up?
Yeah, I think a specific one is we've tried to really double down on doing more meaningful first call discovery here at MadKudu, and almost to a point where we give a little teaser of what MadKudu is, but we haven't been doing a demo, and that was intentional, right? We get as much information as we can to then do a much more tailored and prospect specific demo and proposal for them, which has actually been great overall. But what we found is when we send people these tailored demos via Loom recording after that first call, um, they're not always watching it. I'm sure so many reps run into this. No matter what your recordings or proposals or emails are, people aren't opening them, they're not seeing them, and that goes back to what we said at the beginning of this episode, where they're not just like intentionally ignoring you; they just have so much going on. So ChatGPT ultimately led me to the conclusion that like if we get enough information in that first call, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to use parts of that to give a 2 minute, really relevant demo. Like use one flow that they talked about, show that visually, and say, this is one example of how you're going to save 3 hours per day or per week or whatever it is, right? And she actually got me all the way to that point, and it's something that I absolutely think we could and should be doing and adding to the flow, because then they see it, we guarantee that they see it, versus like hoping that they do when we send them a recording, right? And so kind of keeping control in one more aspect of the sales cycle is what she got me to on this last retro.
Love it. That's super interesting. Super interesting and very relevant. Hey, switching gears a little bit to our last section, we like to discuss tech stack. Like, what are elements of your stack today as a seller, as a human being, that you enjoy and that you would recommend other people look into?
Yeah, there's a lot, and I can't go into all of them, but I think there's one that's more niche that I doubt anyone else you have on the show will talk about, and it's called Skypher. And one thing that every rep runs into at some point when you're selling is, if it's software, they're going to need you to do security reviews and questionnaires and so much stuff that typical reps don't have access to, don't have permission to access, and it just causes issues. And Skyfer, essentially what it does is uses AI to read across all of your company's legal documents and contracts and you name it, and it answers these questionnaires for you automatically, which saves me, probably over the last 5 years here at MadKudu, it's saved me days and days of work just by doing that for me. And so I'm a huge fangirl of that tool. It's awesome, and it gives me more control as a rep, where I don't have to wait 5 days on a security SE or infosec team or whatever to do it for me. It's a tool that can do it in 20 minutes instead of days of waiting, right? So yeah, that's one that I love. And have you heard of it?
Yeah, I think and it's a space that's booming right now. I think like Skypher were I think early in the game of using AI to
Yeah.
parse through a lot of unstructured data with like all of your compliance documents and your policies and all that stuff to help you answer this. I think what's interesting about your approach, and I don't know if that's the case in many companies, is that you as a rep are an end user of the tool, where I think a lot of other companies is still the SEs that have access to it. I think it's awesome that you have access as an AE because it just gives you more control over the velocity of the deal. You're not dependent on other people to fill in questionnaires or put together responses or whatever. And then the people who would typically be in charge of answering the questionnaires, in this case, all they have to do is kind of manage the tool, and then you have access to the tool at any point in time.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And I was going to mention this. I think that they should target sales reps first for any company less than like 100 employees, because like they're the ones that are having to just send slacks to so many different places to get this information. They're the reps that manage everything at these startups, right? And it's been so awesome to have that control. And then like you said, at larger companies, maybe they don't want to give that to every single rep. I think they should, but if they give it to the SEs, at least it's a little bit faster. But it still takes that control away from the rep, where they still are relying on someone else, and they just sit there and saying like, I have a contract that could get signed this week, and I can't because of this, right? So, but yeah, it's a good call out.
Love it. And as we say, time kills all deals. So
Always.
whatever we can do to remove any of that downtime in a deal is essentially like conversion rate points that are win rates that are going up.
Totally.
Love it. Well, Hayden, thanks a ton for sharing your wisdom to the collective mind. Yeah, this was awesome. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about either the tools you mentioned or if they want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the stories you were telling?
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I think we can include that here, or shoot me an email, hayden@madkudu.com, or I can give you my number. I don't know if we want to put my number on the episode, but
Let's
yeah,
put your number on the
happy to,
internet for
yeah.
the overlord to go scan and then be able to scam phone you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in sales. My number is probably every single place you can imagine, so I'm not worried about it. But yeah, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk about any of this, including the tools I use and sell, and yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks a ton again for being on the show. And hopefully this is helpful to everyone listening. And we'll see you on the next one.